And thank you. Back now with the 2011 mayoral debate on knoxpages.com. This special podcast is brought to you by WS Hog Insurance, A Plus Auto Brokers, Wise Choice Propane in Mount Vernon and Utica, the Gold Exchange at Mount Vernon Coin and Collectibles, Fit Body Boot Camp, and doctors Jim Swetlick and Jake Overholt at Health Source Chiropractic and Rehab in Mount Vernon. I'm Adam Taylor. With us are the candidates. We have the Democrat and incumbent Mayor Richard Mavis, and we have the challenger Republican Jay Manners. He is currently serving on Mount Vernon City Council. All right, this question I want to put out there, and this was submitted actually by a reader, and it's timely. Homelessness appears to be a growing problem here in Mount Vernon and Knox County. And just last month, a local pastor who helps to run a homeless shelter on East High Street at a church, he gave you each numbers that demonstrates a growing problem, and he asked for your help. So that said, what do you think about the problem of homelessness here in the community, and what do you think should be done about it? Or I guess better put, what do you intend to do about it if you are mayor? We'll start with the challenger, Councilman Manners.
You know, this is something for me actually I know the pastor very well. I actually help them put in a community garden. I donate equipment and go down and do that every year. And I have rental properties. I've put homeless people up for free to help take care of them. I have some workers in the community that when they call me and they have a real need, I step up. There is a decisive difference between wants and needs, and that's important for a community government to look at that and figure out if somebody's in want or need. But for me, I mean, if you want to talk about pipe dreams, I've always dreamed about creating a homeless village where you could take an old campground and turn that into a place for them. I struggle with getting government heavily involved. We seem to not spend our money very efficiently, and we seem to add lots of regulations. I would love to encourage and help the private sector come up with a shelter and support that wholeheartedly. And I'm working toward that. I've actually volunteered some of my space to see if we can do something like that. But I believe that the private sector will handle that much better than we will as a government. So we don't have all the regulations and problems to deal with. If you start looking into the regulations of a homeless shelter, all the criteria that are needed, emergency access, supervision, background checks, I mean, it's a huge thing, but there is a need. And I believe as a need, we need to step up as a community. And that's where strong community, strong relationships, and neighbors come into taking care of it. And once you create that environment where your churches, your local groups and organizations can step up, help with that situation, and have the community support, the local government support behind that, encouraging it and recognizing it, I think that's a long way to go to get that problem solved.
All right, Mayor Mavis, let's talk about that issue of homelessness. And obviously, this is something that has probably been around a long time, but is just now more in the attention of all of us with the shelter opened up on High Street. What do you think can be done about this? And if you get 4 more years as mayor, do you plan to look at this issue, and what would you do?
Well, first of all, Adam, we're not unlike other rural communities. First thing we have to do is sell the idea to this community that we actually have homeless. Now, we had a minister come to council the other night. Some of the board members are from my church. They are interested in addressing a problem that has been difficult to sell. You know, selling the idea that we have drugs in this community sometimes been very difficult to do. It's we're isolated, we're separated from the larger cities. I know on TV and radio you hear all that sort of thing. But for the last 3 years, we've had opportunity to have a homeless shelter. There are all kind of numbers available. So at least we have those to go forward with. So if you come to city councils, you go to the local media, you go to village councils, you talk to people, eventually you should get the idea sold. We have homeless in our community. How are we going to deal with it? I don't think it's a city responsibility to put money toward this. I think we can assist them in finding proper facilities. I think there are a number of people in this community who will step forward with shelters themselves. But I think the first thing you do is sell the idea you have it. I think there are then opportunities to raise some money. I think cities can help with it. I do not think it's probably a city funding problem. We have enough difficulty funding everything we're supposed to. I do have one idea that one of the things they'll tell you that a lot of the homeless are employed, but they're underemployed. A minimum wage job, if you got a family, won't raise them. and some people are treating unemployment as a job. What we ought to do is have employment assistance. So if they're making $8 an hour in a job and they can't make it go at that, maybe we, rather than giving unemployment and giving some of these other benefits, maybe we ought to subsidize, have subsidized employment. So you give them enough to make that work. If people generally have understanding of the community and what resources are available, they know how to use those to survive. I think homelessness is a real key issue, and people sleep in their cars in the summertime. In the wintertime, they need help. I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we need to do a better job of selling the idea of homelessness, and then support the churches, support the groups that do that sort of thing.
All right, let's talk streets and roadways here for a moment. Some people talk about truck routes in the city needing either better signage or perhaps some new ideas that are maybe less confusing or make it more optimal to travel throughout the city. And do you agree or disagree, Councilman Mainers, with the idea that we need to improve upon the truck routes? And what would be your plan going forward for addressing routes through the city should you be elected to the office of mayor?
This goes back to actually my days in college here. My father, who was a state trooper of the year, came to visit our town, ended up going the wrong way on Gay Street on a one-way because he couldn't follow the traffic signs. And he's a professional. So if a state trooper can't follow our signs, maybe we've got some confusion going on there. Some of the truck drivers refer to our town as Malfunction Junction because they can't seem to get through with all the confusing routes. And it's true. If you drive down, you'll see State Route 13 at the top, and then 2 poles down, it'll be at the bottom. So if they're looking for 13, it's now moved down on the signage. So it's little things like that. But truck route options, you look at changing them, and there's a lot of different drawings. So I'd be careful to tell you that this is the route that I want to take, because you're involved with ODOT, engineering, a lot of people. But there are options available. I've spoke with ODOT at some lengths that we can get those routes changed. And with the safety director, we have a 90-day window to do a trial. We can do a temporary trial to see how things work. So we can start addressing those routes and redirecting them. Anytime you make a change for those street routes, you will have some people that disagree with you. It's just going to happen. The question you have to ask is, what is the best for our community going forward? And what is the most cost-effective way to adjust this route and help solve some of our traffic problems? And it's going to be a series of painful discussions moving that forward, I can tell you that. But I will be absolutely committed to moving that forward.
Mayor Richard Mavis, what are some of the things that you have done during your tenure as mayor to this end, and what would be your future plans for addressing some of the truck routes and other things dealing with transportation and roadways here in the city?
Well, first of all, I'd argue that the routes that are capable of handling trucks and heavy traffic volumes are doing it. The only place you might look at, and we've looked at it, Mr. Mainers knows this, is that section of Chestnut Street. Can you make, rather than route the truck route from Park or through Park over to High, then to Gay, back up Gay, and then out Chestnut again? Could you make that straight through? It's been discussed at council. There are some wrinkles there. We've had discussions with ODOT about it. I would agree that if you go to ODOT and say, hey, we've got a better route, I think you can do that sort of thing. I think if you look at the city of Mount Vernon, we have 5 state routes that come in here: 661, 229, 586, 3, and 13. 13 has the greatest amount of trucks on it. So we're looking at that corridor of taking 13 from the industrial park straight through town. Right now we split it. It creates all kind of problems. So we ever able to do that, that's something we have on the burner. We need to acquire right away. We need to get the state support because it's big dollars to do it. Now, I'm in favor of building another bridge across the Kokosing. This viaduct's been wonderful for well over 150 years, or nearly 150 years. The Mount Vernon Bridge, Mount Vernon Avenue Bridge, has been good. But we will need, if the city's going to grow, which we know it is growing, we have job growth here, we will need to get our major truck route through town into a single corridor. So I think that is good. And if you're talking about building something, I think you build something. I don't think that the forefathers who set up the one-way Gay and the one-way Mulberry, and yes, it can be confusing, the public square, we should try to remove trucks from the public square. Right now, that's not all possible. I do not think, as long as we're talking about this, Adam, I don't think it's possible any longer to get the multi-million or even billions of dollars to build outer belts. I think what our motivation should be is to handle our local traffic. I'm talking about local traffic. That doesn't mean big trucks and that sort of thing. But I think we need to tie together some of the existing roads. For instance, bringing 229 and Route 36 on the east side, bringing that together. And I think with some partnerships with townships in the county and the city, we can do that. I think there's 661 straight across to 3 and 36 South. I think, that's something that may be possible. But so we have some opportunities within the structure that we have. And as far as truck routes, I'd like to see ODOT come in, and they actually come in and monitor the signs. They do an evaluation of the signs, and they actually mark the state routes. We've made some suggestions, and they've been good about doing that sort of thing. But it all needs to be continually tweaked. We need to work with ODOT on it. Certainly we need to look at our traffic patterns, but I do think our city was somewhat limited because a lot of the streets, we're not going to put streets on, or trucks on Vine Street or McKenzie Street, some of those. It's just not capable of doing it. Chestnut Street to Norton, maybe that's a possibility, something we've talked about. So it always can be looked at and can always be upgraded.
That is the incumbent Mayor Richard Mavis. You are listening to the 2011 mayoral debate on knoxpages.com. We're going to pick this up in our other segment in just a moment.